The Commanders' offensive line shows up. Both quarterbacks duel as they throw for 4 touchdowns apiece. All that and more on this edition of Commanders Gridiron Report.
For real, we don't know how to act. Yeah, I'm pointing out facts. If I point a finger, that's point of attack. Good point, who's next? Flag on the plate, now I'm causing them death. We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A die-hard fan, never live with regret. Yes, sir. Go to my neck, go to my neck. Burgundy flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Be my guest. Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep? Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Watch the middle. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feet the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
Welcome, one and all across the nation and around the world. I welcome you all to episode 9 of the Commanders Gridiron Report. I am your host, Drew Willingham, and we are back for another edition of the Commanders Gridiron Report as we have to cover what happened in yesterday's game. And with that being said, let's go ahead and take this into the 1st and 10 to break down what happened in that game.
They are the Washington Commanders. New name, new marks, new uniform.
Soldiers, are we ready for Operation Burgundy?
And here with the 1st and 10, the Philadelphia Eagles come to Landover, Maryland to take on the Washington Commanders and take the victory 38-31 as Sam Howell threw for 4 touchdowns in that loss. The offensive line actually showed up as they only allowed 1 sack. And who would have thought that the Commanders would have given up 1 less sack than what the Eagles did all day, as the Eagles gave up 2 sacks. The Commanders gave up 1. Now, that 1 sack that they gave up, that shot that Sam Howell took was definitely 1 shot he did not want to take. Those type of shots you want to avoid. However, he is lucky and today still be fine. A little banged up, but hey, at least he will be there next week. As we got a commenter out there, Ike is in the house and says, yo, that was one great game. And yes, Ike, it definitely was a great game as we are about to break it down here on this episode. As here for the 1st and 10, again, Sam Howell threw for 4 touchdowns to match what Jalen Hurts did in that game. It's a 38-31 deficit. Now, it was a big scoring contest in the 4th quarter. Of all quarters, you definitely want to see that type of a shootout go back and forth in the 4th quarter. And for those of you fans for both teams in attendance for that game in Landover, Maryland, you got a great show there for the second half, especially in the 4th quarter. Now, the Eagles outscored the Commanders 28-14 in that second half, so it didn't really go the way that you would want it to go for the Commanders fans out there. But going into halftime, things were looking good for the Commanders as they were up 17-10, had a 1-possession lead over the Eagles, and things were looking good. As you know, at that point, there were no turnovers. They hadn't allowed the sack yet. But things would change as the Eagles would put the pressure on during the second half. And with that being said, in order for us to go through that, let's go ahead and take it into the Burgundy Flex Review, where we discuss everything from 1, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quarters out there. Let's go ahead and take it into the Burgundy Flex Review for that one.
Go to my neck, Burgundy Flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Be my guest.
And here for the Burgundy Flex Review as we break down what happened in this Week 8 contest with the Eagles. And this one right here, it was definitely a good matchup to watch. I mean, much, much better of a game than what we saw the week prior when they faced the Giants. When the 1-5 Giants faced off against the then 3-3 Commanders. The Commanders have now taken back-to-back losses and divisional opponents as well, as it doesn't help for seeding if you were trying to get close to that divisional number 1 rank at some point before the end of the year. Now, that's not going to happen. Let's just look at the facts. The best case scenario for the Commanders, if they won out, would be to get a wild card spot, because you're not going to get the division championship this year. With the way the Eagles are playing, then you have to go past the Cowboys, which not much of a contest in comparison to the Eagles. The Eagles on paper have done well, now 7-1 for their respective season. Definitely playing very well overall. Came into this contest 6-1. And it looked like they were almost going to be 6-2, especially going into halftime. But you can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't judge a game based on how things go in the first half, because as we saw going into the second half, things would change as the Eagles would outscore the Commanders 28-14. But let's look at the overall comparison between these two teams. 374 total yards in comparison to the Commanders' 472. The Eagles had 374 to the Commanders' 472. When it comes to passing yards, and you look at what the Eagles did last year, getting to the Super Bowl based on the play of Jalen Hurts, and he still showed up in this game, as the total passing yards that the Eagles had were 315 passing yards. Jalen Hurts, 319 of those. But, of course, when you equivalent sacks and other things into it, it was a total for 315. Now, in comparison to Sam Howell, what Sam Howell did, 397 passing yards in the losing effort. Both quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts and Sam Howell, threw for 4 touchdowns. I mean, this was a shootout back and forth, especially in the second half. And if it wasn't for that one interception that Sam Howell threw, this game may have gone into overtime like we saw in the previous matchup when they were in Philly, going back and forth there as well. So, in this one was a little bit more exciting as we saw better offensive play from the Commanders, especially at the quarterback position. Although Sam Howell has been pretty solid throughout the year, it's been that offensive line that has held him from doing better things. And throwing for nearly 400 passing yards in this game, you saw a definite improvement from the overall offense, because if it wasn't for the offensive line giving him the protection that he needed, the time that he needed to make those throws, run outside the pocket, extend the plays, and throw outside the pocket as well, we would not have seen the type of production that we saw from Sam Howell in this game. Now, the one thing that's still a huge, huge red flag on this Commanders team is the running attack. And when you've got 59 rushing yards on 10 attempts by your leading rusher, and that being Brian Robinson Jr., and then Antonio Gibson, 2 carries for 14 yards, it definitely was something to not be proud of, and you're not going to get anywhere, especially in these close games. That's what matters right there, is being able to establish the run. Sam Howell had 52 pass attempts. I repeat that again, 52 pass attempts. And we are seeing more and more games where Sam Howell is attempting over 50 pass attempts per game. Now, he did complete 39 of those. He only missed 13 of those 52 attempts. So for that, he's doing a great job, but you cannot rely on the kid as he gets older and matures into this position to be able to throw it 50 times a game and expect to win. It's not going to happen. You got to have your running attack balanced to get you at least 70 to 80 yards per game. And the difference of 20 to 30 to 40 yards from your running back in production makes a huge difference in the balance of where the trajectory of a game can go. And we're seeing it with the Eagles being able to take the victory here over the Commanders, as DeAndre Swift, even though he only had 57 rushing yards, you look at Jalen Hurts, he only provided 6 of those rushing yards as well for the overall rushing yards. What I'm saying, you might look at their stats and be like, well, Drew, what they're doing over for Philly is pretty similar in comparison to what they did in Washington. Yes, as far as for that game. But overall, in every game of the season, for the overall trajectory of it, you don't see that on a regular basis to where your running back is getting 50 some rushing yards per game, and then they're going to win and it'd be 7-1 at this point. It's the games like this, the divisional games, where the defense stepped up for the Commanders. Some of them are probably looking to get traded and wanted to put up their best game possible, and we'll get to that in a minute, in order to have a little bit more trade value going to whatever team, etc. But overall, you cannot expect to win a game when your leading rusher has less than 60 yards in a game and your next leading rusher on top of that only has 14 yards. If your leading running back is going to only have 59, 60 yards in a game, your next rusher should be at like 40 to 50 yards, to where combined, they're getting a total of over 100 yards on the ground to produce and contribute towards the overall production of this game and games going forward. So when I look at that for the Burgundy Flex review, that's basically the biggest thing that I have to take away from it, is the running a game for both the Commanders and the Eagles need to improve if they expect to do anything outside of this division. It's working out in the division for some of these games, but not within the outskirts of the division. Now, going into the defensive side, Nakobe Dean for the Eagles stepped up with 11 tackles and 1 assist. He was their leading defensive impact on the Eagles side. Nakobe Dean has definitely been a huge contributor to the Eagles defense and the positive upswing that they have had over the past few years based on their defensive play. The leading player on the defense for the Commanders was David Mayo with 6 tackles and 3 assists. Other than that, the defense was kind of quiet because Cameron Curl only had 5 tackles and 2 assists. Percy Butler, 4 tackles and 3 assists. When you look at Montez Sweat's 3 tackles with 2 assists, as well as Jamin Davis with 3 tackles and 1 assist, pretty quiet when you're looking at some of these guys, especially Chase Young, who only had 1 tackle as well. These guys who are potentially going to be trade bait this year at the deadline, which is tomorrow on Halloween. So happy early Halloween. But some of these guys that are going to be trade bait, you want to have more production from them, because if you're going to expect some type of trade value in return and they're playing the way they are now, it's going to be tough to potentially move Chase Young for a good compensation package in return for what we could see between now and the deadline very, very soon. As Tuesday is getting here real fast, it's now 5:00 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, the eve of Halloween, the eve of the deadline. And we could see some moves being made now that the Commanders are 3-5 as a result of the past 2 games that we have seen in the past 2 weeks. We'll see. They've said out loud they're not looking to make any huge moves, but you got to plan for the future. And if you're going to lose some of these guys during the offseason anyway, you might as well make the moves that you can now and get the type of compensations that you can to help you out in the draft next year, or potentially the next couple years, depending on who you move and what you get in return. But back to the Burgundy Flex review. When it comes to this right here, the defense wasn't really a huge impact on either side of the ball for the Eagles or the Commanders, as one team gives up 38 points and the next one gives up 31. So combined, when you look at that, that's 69 combined scoring points that these teams combined for in this matchup this week. So for me, the defense didn't really make that big of an impact. And I'll say that again. Both teams, the Eagles and the Commanders, combined for 69 total points. So in my opinion, the defense on either side of the ball didn't really make that much of an impact. It was the quarterback play by both quarterbacks for the Eagles and the Commanders, being Jalen Hurts and Sam Howell, as they both threw for 4 touchdowns. It was that one interception that Sam Howell that made a difference. It was that sack that the Eagles defense, that was the one impactful thing I will say, that they got on the quarterback of the Commanders being Sam Howell that made a difference in this game. And even though the Commanders got 2 sacks for their defense on Jalen Hurts, it still wasn't enough to make a difference at the end of the game as we look at this Burgundy Flex review. Now, one highlight for special teams for the Commanders. Joey Sly hits a field goal, right? As they scored 4 touchdowns and they had that 1 field goal. But he hits his career high field goal, being a 61-yard field goal. That would have been a 56-yard field goal. But there was a penalty on the offense that brought it back 5 more yards. I believe it was a false start that they had. Yeah, it was a false start. Brought it back 5 yards. Sly has to attempt a 61-yard field goal. Makes it through with a little bit left to spare. Probably could have hit a 64 to 65 yarder. I would say probably 63 to 64 to be safe. 65 might have been stretching it. But hits the 61 down the middle. Beautiful kick and sets a franchise record for the longest kick by any Washington Commanders, formerly known as the REDSKINS, or WTF, hashtag WTF for the Washington team of football. Sets a record for the entire franchise history for the longest field goal ever in the almost 100 years of this team in the 91, 92 years that this team has been around. So that's another positive from this game. There's many positives from the game as far as the quarterback play, the offensive line stepped up. There was just some miscues along the way. That interception that Sam Howell threw was pretty costly, along with a few other things that they need to improve on. But overall, bouncing back from losing to a dumpster Pelican team being the New York Giants the previous week, then coming into this matchup and hanging with the Eagles through and through from beginning to end, even though they got outscored 28-14, I have to give credit where it's due. The Commanders showed up. They did their job against a team that just went to the Super Bowl representing the NFC. Have to give it credit. On this one, you have to look at what Eric Bieniemy's done as the offensive coordinator, because this type of play from this team would not have been possible last year with the previous staff that they have in there, being Scott Turner as the offensive coordinator. I think they're going to have to make some moves on the defense, especially replacing the defensive coordinator, that being Jack Del Rio, because he keeps giving up a lot of points, especially in some of these matchups to these good teams. Like, you look at what Buffalo did against them, and now you look at what Philadelphia's done against them a couple times and the amount of points that they are scoring. They're scoring a lot of points on this Commanders defense, and especially when you have the talent that you have on this defense, you're expected to produce more than what you're producing when you are this team known as the Commanders. Guys, that's going to do it for the Burgundy Flex review. We'll get into it a little bit more with the Soldiers of the Week breakdown after we come back from our first commercial break. Let's go ahead and take it to that, and I'll see you on the other side here in about 90 seconds.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. You kids on the block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason.
Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commanders Gridiron Report. You want your Commanders to be repped right? Well, D. Willie is your man. Commanders Gridiron Report. Every Monday at 3:05 p.m. Eastern, 2:05 p.m. Central. Exclusively on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J.KUL.
Where my soldiers? Right side. Commanders. Where my soldiers? Left side.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
And welcome back to the Commanders Gridiron Report. I need to update that commercial pack with the Commanders Gridiron Report logoing and not the In or Out Sports Debate. But I want to take this time before we go into the next segment to give a shout out to this dude I know named Mickey Delaney. And Mickey sends me this message earlier today. Mickey says this: "What did I tell you about the chick-feeding, suck-ass Commanders?" Well, you know what, Mick? They lost. Yes, they lost, but to a great team there, Mick. And with that being said, I can't get that upset about it as we get ready to acknowledge the Soldiers of the Week. But what I will tell you is this: they may have made some mistakes, as we all make mistakes out here on these streets. They made some mistakes on the field. It is what it is. I cannot get that upset about it. But what I can say is this: you need to calm down out there on those streams there, man. Now, let's go ahead and take this into the Soldiers of the Week.
Where my soldiers, right side. Commanders. Where my soldiers, left side.
And here with the Soldiers of the Week, let's go ahead and break down the ones who were the standouts in this game in this past week. Right here, we got to look at A.J. Brown, who had 8 receptions for 130 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns, especially that first touchdown. For those of you out there who didn't see, he kind of twirled around and had the one-handed catch or whatnot. That, with the type of coverage that he had on him, was an absolute great play to make when it comes to A.J. Brown. Have to give him a shout-out for what he did. Even though he's part of the other team, have to give him a shout-out for what he did when it comes to A.J. Brown. Next, we'll look at Sam Howell. 39 completions on 52 pass attempts, 397 passing yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Sam Howell showed up and played like a dog. He did. He absolutely showed up. You have to give the man credit when it comes to what he did out there on that field this past Sunday. Have to give the man credit. He did a great job. Now, let's go back and look at the last Soldiers of the Week. And that being Jalen Hurts. 29 of 38 pass attempts completed. 319 passing yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Another dog out there doing the things he did on that field. And it was because of the play by him, the leadership by him, that's what helped this team get over the hump and win to get 7 victories in 8 games for those Eagles. Doing a great thing out there. Have to give the shout out to them. Even though they are a rival, they are doing great things out there in the field, and that's why they are part of what is now being called the Soldiers of the Week. So with that said, the standouts from this past week, again, I have to give it to A.J. Brown, I have to give it to Sam Howell, and I have to give it to Jalen Hurts for what they did out there in Landover, Maryland during their Week 8 contest. Now, that's it between the Eagles and the Commanders for this year. As you know, the Eagles sweep them 2-0 in the series they have had this year. It's looking definitely up and great for the Eagles going forward. But when it comes to the Commanders, the best that they can hope for, in my opinion, is to go 9-8 to finish this season. There's going to be some moves that are made during the offseason, as this is going to be an evaluation period for the rest of this year, as it currently has been the entire season for this new ownership group, as they have been looking at things from afar, seeing how the management's doing things. And, you know, for Riverboat Ron, it's not looking good coming back as the head coach next year, especially the one play that he should have challenged yesterday where the ball was dropped by the receiver. You know, when Smith had the ball and he dropped it, had he challenged that, things could have gone a completely different way and the momentum would have kept being in the favor of the Commanders. But from that point forward, the momentum shifted as we saw what happened from that point forward as the Eagles continued to knock on the door and take that win away from the Commanders. So let me know here what you think in the comments, whether you are with us live or you are syndicated as you're watching this post-live production. And it looks like Ike has a comment as he says, the Giants are not dumpster Pelicans as they almost beat the Jets. Ike!
Stop it. Get some help.
Come on now. You came into the matchup last week 1-5. Yes, you got the win against the Commanders.
Yeah.
and you were slightly competitive with the Jets yesterday.
Yeah.
But you want to get excited about a contest with their backup quarterback, that being the Jets quarterback, being Zach Wilson, in your matchup. You know, when you have Tyrod Taylor and then you have your other backup quarterback, I forget what his name is because Daniel Jones is not there. You can't get that excited about what happened. Yes, if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley, he's the one that kept you in that game. But you're going to have to hear more about what I have to say about this tomorrow on Total Football Talk. And that's where
Let me talk to you.
will happen when it comes to this subject right here. And that's when Charles Barkley will say this if you don't like it.
That's terrible.
Because as always, you, Ike.
You can't handle the truth.
Acknowledge me.
Come on now, Ike. Get it together. Guys, keep those comments coming, and we'll acknowledge them as we are now at the midway point of this show. Let's go ahead and take this into the next segment and see what we got to say here for the Showstopper.
High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feet the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
What adjustments should the Commanders make to improve from Week 8? The biggest thing that I was talking about earlier was they need to establish more of the run from these running backs. I mean, if the offensive line is going to do what they did in this past game, they showed up. Their run blocking, their pass blocking, everything was looking much, much better than what we had seen in the previous 7 games. I mean, even in the 3 games they won, I was seeing much, much more improvement as you were doing this against the reigning NFC champions who just, represented the entire NFC in the Super Bowl this past February. So when I look at that, and the Eagles team hasn't changed much since then, what this offensive line did was far beyond the expectation that I had going into this game. Now, because it was a divisional matchup, of course, the rivalry history, these games do tend to be a lot closer than what we see out of any other game in the season with any other opponent, especially when the Commanders are at their worst. But the Commanders are not at their worst because if you've been paying attention over the past 20, 25 years, we've seen several more teams from this franchise that have been far, far worse than what we've seen out of this 2023 team. So the positives, the sparks, what we're seeing, have to be excited about it. You have to be excited what you're seeing from your quarterback in Sam Howell. The adjustments that they need to make is you need to not allow your defense to give up 38 points in the game because, 38 points given up will definitely guarantee you a loss most of the time. Unless your offense can score 40-plus points a game. That's the only way that's going to be feasible. And you have to have a better balance on that defensive side if you're going to get anywhere out here in the NFL. Now, as we're seeing, any given team can win on any given Sunday, as we saw the Broncos beat the Chiefs this past weekend. But that's not what we want to have for our expectation when it comes to this Commanders team. We want to see great things come from this team because there are some talented individuals on this team. When you look at the coaching, though, there's not that much talented coaching outside of Eric Bieniemy, in my opinion, who he has got 2 Super Bowls, a part of his repertoire, to prove it. So when I look at that, you got to get better production from your defense, better protection as far as protecting those leads. The defense isn't doing that in these past in this contest. You did well the week before when you only gave up 2 scores to the Giants, I guess. But that's against the Giants. Now you're playing the Eagles. You gave up 38 points. Your offense scored 31 points, still kept you in it, and you couldn't do the small things the second half to keep them above water because you did it in the first half where you only gave up 10 points. But then you gave up 28 points in the second half. You got to get better about finishing strong. You're starting off strong on both sides of the ball, but you need to get better on finishing strong on both sides. Offense, you were solid through and through, all 4 quarters. You only had that one mistake, really, where you had that interception by Sam Howell, and then they gave up the 1 sack as well. But I'm not really going to fault too much on the offense because if you can give up 1 sack or less per game, you're doing okay. So with that, I can't even get upset with the offensive line when you've thought about the games that they've given up 6+ sacks in a game where you're worried about the health of your quarterback. They definitely stepped up this past week. And we'll see how that carries them into this next contest with another team that we'll talk about very, very soon when we come back from this next commercial break when it comes to the opponent of the week. Stick around here in about 90 seconds when we come back from the commercial break. We'll talk about who their opponent of the week is. We'll see you on the other side.
Football, football, and more football, you say? Well, tune in to Total Football Talk. Join your hosts, Drew Willingham.
You were playing like a dumpster Pelican quarterback.
And Cole Johnson.
It sets up for possible play action. Did you hear that, Dak Prescott?
As they take you through all the paces, both on the field and in the boardroom, of Total Football Talk. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. Exclusively on the Sertoba Media and the Comey Media Incorporated YouTube channel. If you're looking for a sports program that gives you the flavor.
Washington Commanders? Really?
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
That pulls no punches.
Thuggish act by a thuggish actor.
That gives you some humor.
Praise everything LeBron does and never criticize it.
If you want a show that gives you good times, then this is that show. BS3 Network proudly presents.
I am Cole Johnson and welcome to
Cole Sports with a Z. Every Friday on Patreon and every Saturday on YouTube, Spreaker, and all other outlets.
And welcome back to the Commanders Gridiron Report as we have gone through 4 of the 6 segments for this episode. We've only got 2 more left. Let's go ahead and take it into our next one and discuss the opponent of this next week. When it comes to the Commanders, let's see what they've got in store.
Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep?
And here for the opponent of the week, the Washington Commanders travel to New England to take on the Patriots. When it comes to this situation right here, you're facing the 2-6 Patriots. Now, can't take them lightly, as you, the Commanders, are 3-5. And you could easily be tied with the Patriots for the record. If you lose in this one, you would lose your 3rd straight game, and you would be 3-6, just like the Patriots, who have definitely not played well this year overall. Now, do I think that the Commanders are going to lose 3 straight games and fall to 3-6 after getting to 3-3 and clawing their way to get 3-3 and then losing 2 divisional games these past 2 weeks? I don't think so. I think that the Commanders are going to show up in this game as they were primed with this past contest, as the last time we saw the Eagles face the Commanders. You look at the game that they had, and they were going back and forth. They were in overtime. You know, they lost 34-31. Then the next week, they lost 40-20. And it took the, basically from that point forward, is I was going to go one way, but now I'm going to shift gears backwards. You look at what happened in that game. Basically, the Eagles and the Bills, from those games forward, right before that, Bills beat them 37-3. The Eagles beat them 34-31. The Bears beat them 40-20. They had 3 straight losses. And this after the Broncos game. The only win they have had in this span over the past 5 games, 6 games, my apologies, has been the win over the Falcons 24-16. They are 1-5 in their last 6 contests. It's not looking good. However, when you look at these contests that they have lost, 2 of them have been close against a really good team, that being the Eagles. They've lost to the Bills as well, so you got to put that up there. But the Bears and the Giants being the two losses out of there that you can't really equate because they were the two bad teams. So when you look right here, I think that if they're going to turn things around and get close to having a 9-8 record to end it, it has to start right here against the Patriots, because I feel like when you play the Seahawks the following week on November 12th, that's going to be a tough matchup and you may not win it. If you're going to get a shot at getting anywhere close to this 9-8 record, you have to get this victory right here. If you don't get this right here, then I feel like they're not going to be tanking for Caleb Williams because they're not going to get the overall pick. Plus, you like what you're seeing from Sam Howell. If they don't get this win against the New England Patriots, they are gunning for a top 5 to top 10 pick in this next year's draft. That's the only thing I could think of, because maybe not intentionally, but there might be some moves, just like Ron Rivera should have challenged that call in yesterday's game that would have overturned it and kept the momentum in their favor to where they may have won that game. If we see anything like that in this game against the New England Patriots, to where certain things could have gone a different way had they made a better decision at certain points throughout the game, that could potentially be what this situation is when it comes to what they're playing for. Because for me, if I was the coach or I was running an organization, especially now at 3-5, I would still want to try to get the best out of my players, because you're still evaluating every single person to decide who you're going to bring back during the offseason. Hell, you've already been doing that through the first 8 games of the season, because now at the midway point, you got a trade deadline looming by tomorrow that you need to make a move or two if you're going to try to get some type of compensation in return before you get nothing during the offseason. Because Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and others, you've got some contract decisions to make, and one or both, if not many more, may not want to come back after some of the frustrations that they have had playing during this season, as there was a bigger expectation for what this team could do now that they have their bona fide starter in Sam Howell. But the offensive line and other things throughout this team haven't helped with the production and the positive flow for this team. It's been a roller coaster like we've been privy to seeing from this team for so many years. When it comes to this matchup right here with the Patriots have the same type of woes that the Commanders do, except for the only difference when it comes to the Commanders and the Patriots is they have a Hall of Fame coach who may have rode the coattails of one Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II. It's been a while since I've said that, so I'm going to say it right now and one more time. Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II. He's rode the coattails of that man. And we've seen that being exposed over the past few seasons, most notably this year, as they come into this game with a 2-6 record facing off against the Commanders. Pretty equal in stature, these teams. But the one thing that the Commanders have over the Patriots is a good quarterback. Mac and Cheese for the New England Patriots. And I say it again, Mac Jones, I call him Mac and Cheese. Mac and Cheese is not your answer at quarterback for the New England Patriots, regardless of how wishy-washy your offensive line is, okay? They don't really have the same type of offensive line cracks that the Commanders have had throughout the first 7 weeks of this season until this past week when they wanted to show up. If we get the production that we saw out of the Commanders yesterday in their game against the Eagles, and again from what they showed the previous time they played the Eagles, if we see that Washington Commanders team show up in Foxborough this weekend, then that team is going to beat the Patriots this weekend. I feel like there's a good chance that the Commanders walk away with this one, not because of the overall record of what the Patriots have, because they got one more win the Patriots know. When you really break it down, this offensive line, this offensive team, with that being the Patriots, has been struggling quite a bit. Their defense on the same type of par, and Bill Belichick is known for being a defensive mastermind, as he was a defensive coordinator well before he was a head coach and well before he had the success with the Patriots during the 2000s, when probably he had the best defense in his tenure as a head coach in the 2000s leading into the 2010s. Over the past decade, his defense has been suspect. And if Sam Howell shows up and throws for 350 to 400 passing yards and 3 and 4 touchdowns, this team's going to win, and win pretty handedly by at least 14 to 17 points. But it's the NFL. Anything can happen on any given Sunday with any given team, as we saw with the Denver Mother, Father, and Broncos as they beat the Chiefs. And that's the second time I've said on this show, is I give a bing to the Total Football Talk show that you will see tomorrow at a special time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, as we will be on our usual networks like Sartoba Media and Comey Media, YouTube channels, as well as like LinkedIn and Twitter and all that. But we will also be streaming for the first time on Pro Sports Fans, an app which I will give you more information here on the final drive when we get to that here in a second. We wanted to give a quick bing to that show as I was plugging the Broncos and the Giants and the other things that happened over this past weekend and their matchups throughout different points in this show. Even though this is a Commanders show, you have to show love for the other shows out there, and especially as you see in our commercial breaks that we have taken. With that being said, we've now gone through 5 great segments, and we only have one more to go through before we wrap things up, and that is the final drive.
We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A diehard fan of a never regret. Yes, sir.
And here with the final drive, my closing thoughts heading into Week 9. You know, it's been a wild situation. As you know, I broke it down pretty handedly when you look at the past 6 games by this Commanders team going 1-5. Now, I threw a shade at the Giants for coming into that contest last week, 1-5. The Commanders being 1-5 in the past 6 games, they are playing like dumpster Pelicans. And I look forward to going off on you guys very handedly on tomorrow's Total Football Talk with Cole Johnson. It is going to be one great show tomorrow with my guy, Cole Johnson, as I light you up like a firecracker tomorrow, Commanders. I have been nice and respectful throughout this show. I cannot promise, as I will have an extra day to stew on it. You caught me off guard this week when it comes to certain things, and especially when it comes to that one thing that really grinds my gears with Ron Rivera not throwing that challenge flag as he had the opportunity to do, throw that challenge, and it could have changed the momentum of this team. Kind of like when you should have taken a timeout, when I said you should have taken a timeout a few weeks ago. All you had to do is this, followed by this, say timeout, and take time, ice that kicker like you should have. But you didn't. And that was during that overtime matchup against the Eagles. And you would have thought that you would have made this decision a little bit better the second go around, when all you had to do was one less thing. You didn't even have to do this, and you didn't have to do that. 3 motions, 1, 2, and 3, all together for a timeout. All you had to do this last time, and this is yellow, but it still does the same thing, where you pull the flag out of your pocket and you throw it up in there. That was a towel. But the other thing you could have thrown was a flag, and you didn't do it, Ron Rivera. All you had to do was challenge, and you didn't fathering challenge. Ron Rivera, you do not need to be the head coach of the Commanders. And that's how I feel. That's why I just went off on you, Riverboat Ron, as you need to get it together out here on those fields, because you are the head coach in question, the one who goes into the locker room at halftime and just lets them figure it out on their own. You are supposed to do better at your job. Hashtag do better, but you're not. You suck. And that is why this team is 3-5, along with your boy, Jack Del Rio, who is the defensive coordinator, who is sucking too. You need to get together, because that is why this team does not have a great future ahead with you two leading the defensive side of the ball. It's looking very bleak, very, very bleak there, Ron Rivera. And that is part of my final thought for this show, as I got pretty animated. Guys, I want to apologize for one thing, as we normally start this show at 3:05 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays. This past weekend, I got knocked around like a dumpster pelican, as it was a pretty busy weekend at my full-time career. And I'm used to working 4/10s, Wednesday through Saturday. It was a great thing I had going on for almost 7 years between my previous career and this other career that I started within the past year in the IT field. And then this past week was the first week where we had to move from 4 10s to 5 9s, except for I didn't work 9-hour days. I worked like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-hour days mixed and sprinkled in there in variety of different things because it was a busy week. But it was probably the busiest week of this seasonal part of this year in the fall. So I can't get upset or anything. Plus, it's overtime and it's money, so I like it. So, and I like what I do, along with what I'm doing here with the podcasting game and trying to build the Sartoba Media brand, along with the people I collaborate with. But I have to say that this past week knocked me out. I was knocked out from all that work, and with everything my body's been through over the past year and a half. When it tells me to shut down and take a break, that's what I did. And that's why this show started off a little bit later today. As yesterday, I went to bed, didn't set an alarm. I slept in pretty good. And I work mid shift to where I work, like 4 p.m. to like 1, 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning and work like 45 minutes from my house. So it's a lot of traveling. So I'm used to being up late, used to being up between, 5, 6, and 7 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't fall asleep till this morning, woke up. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I still had to do some things to prepare for this show. So that's why this show started late today. I had to recover, had to get rest. I'm actually on PTO this week, which is great because I got some things I need to take care of before it gets cold outside. Got some personal things I got to do, some yard work, some other things that we have to put as part of our priorities that I've been kind of pushing back for a little bit. So for myself, you will see an increase of me being here on the interwebs and the streams this week as we got Total Football Talk tomorrow. It's regular time like I announced for this week. But I'm also making 3 guest appearances this week. And that is one for the Wrestling Realm Wednesday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, which you can find on the Wrestling Realm on their YouTube channel. I'll also be making an appearance on No Credentials Required the same night at 8 p.m. Eastern time for about an hour and a half. That's usually about the average of their show. And the following day, I will be on with Kyle Nash on the Student of the Game show that he has, and we will be talking what he likes to call stickball, the World Series, and some football and some other things as well. So those 3 guest appearances you can find me on this week, as I will be using a small portion of my PTO to at least give back to those who I don't have the usual availability to do, because when their shows go live, I'm working my full-time job. So it'll be an honor and a privilege to be a part of those shows. Again, there's no credentials required on Wednesday from 8 p.m. Eastern time to about 9 to 9:30 is what they average on their time frame. The Wrestling Realm that same night from 10:30 p.m. Eastern time until whenever the shenanigans ends, because I love that show. I look forward to talking some wrestling with my guys over there. And then Thursday with my man Kyle Nash of the Student of the Game. You can find me there around 8:30 to 8:40 p.m. Eastern time. I'm not sure. I'll get back to you on that. But those 3 guest appearances will be happening for me this week while I'm on PTO. I'm enjoying it. I'm getting rested up. I'm also taking care of some things that are priorities, things that I've needed to take care of while I have the opportunity. But the best part about this is the extra time I get to spend with you, the people. The millions and millions of podcasters out there do great things, but I at least appreciate, even if it's a small community right now, if it breaks through and gets big, or if it stays about here and just expands naturally, whatever the case may be, I just appreciate being part of this with you guys. For those of you who show up in the comments and are part of something as special as what we have going on right here. It looks like Mick said, I am sorry. I just woke up. Well, Mick, I actually called you out earlier, and I'll bring it back to this before we get on out of here. This is Mick right here. Mick had to say this in a message to me earlier. He said, what did I tell you about the chick-feeding, suck-ass Commanders? Well, Mick, I said, what in the blue hell, as a response to your message? Because when it comes to this right here, yes, they may suck sometimes, but what is up with chick-feeding, suck-ass Commanders? That is my question to you, Mick. Let me know the answer here in the comments down below on how you feel when it comes to chick-feeding, suck-ass Commanders. Guys, we have had one entertaining show here with you. Thank you for those of you who commented throughout, Ike, Mick, and for those of you who watch this after it's live, who like and share and subscribe to the channels that are here for Sartoba Media when it comes to, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, Threads, all these other different things we have, Snapchat, all these other different things that we have out there as platforms on social media. And most importantly, I wouldn't say most importantly, but also part of that mix that I didn't even say, that should have been part of that important list is TikTok, because Sartoba's been growing now over 1,100 subscribers on TikTok. So for those of you out there who are part of this group of people, the VIPs I like to call you, thank you as always for tuning in and being part of something that's special to me and something that I have fun on the very little free time that I have each and every week, being able to give you a little piece of myself out here on these streams. Thank you as always for tuning in. I've only got one more thing left to do on the way out of here, and that's look at one badass outro. I am Drew Willingham. Everybody stay safe out here in these streets.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side, Commanders, where my soldiers, watch the middle, Commanders, where my soldiers, now we step, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side, now we step, where my soldiers, watch the middle. Commanders, where my soldiers, hit 'em.
Sartoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
You ain't got to go home, but you got to get on up out of here. Thank you very, very much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Commanders Gridiron Report. I will see you all next week with episode 10. Everybody, stay safe out here in these streets.